Greetings, esteemed viewers. Welcome, one and all, to the realm of anime dreams. Today's presentation delves into the captivating realm of fan fiction. Imagine, if you will, a scenario where Deku assumes the roles of both a youthful educator and a devoted parent. Disclaimer: the content showcased on this platform is intended purely for entertainment and contemplation. I lay no claim to the anime footage featured herein. All accolades and rights rightfully belong to their original creators and copyright owners. Without further ado, let us embark upon this imaginative journey. In an early morning scene, where the first rays of sunlight pierce through the gaps in the curtains, a youthful man with unruly green locks rose, rubbing his eye with a fist, feeling a bit drowsy. His gaze shifted to find a little 5-year-old girl with white hair nestled in the sheets, peacefully asleep and clinging to his torso as usual. Amused, he smiled at her adorableness and carefully freed himself from her grip to leave her comfortably nestled in bed. No matter how many times he insisted she sleep in her own room, Eri always sneaked into his bed at night. Feeling somewhat tired, he got up and headed to the bathroom, grabbing his toothbrush, and began his usual daily hygiene routine, brushing his teeth, splashing water on his face, and checking if his teeth were clean, all routine tasks. Once more awake, he smiled faintly at his reflection in the mirror, finding no significant flaw needing his attention, everything as usual, his curly hair of green hue, eyes of the same color but with a more emerald shade, the tiny freckles he was born with and would die with someday. This thought elicited a small chuckle. After a brief glance, he dressed in black sports shorts and a sleeveless white shirt, then proceeded to his daily exercise routine in his small home gym, repeating it diligently to maintain his healthy form. Once done with his workout, he showered to wash away all traces of sweat and odor, emerging from the bathroom about 10 minutes later wearing green boxers and a towel wrapped around his head, his body still damp from the recent shower. He calmly returned to his room, noticing Eri still asleep. He sat on the edge of her bed, gently stroking her head with a warm smile adorning his face. She looked truly adorable when she slept. Afterward, he focused on his phone to check the messages he had received, finding only one from his mother, seemingly sent the previous night. He hadn't read it then due to the exhaustion from a busy day of saving people, but it was nothing new for him. "Mom, remember not to be late, look presentable, and make a good impression in your class. Tomorrow morning, go to work without worrying about Eri. Toshinori will pick her up. He and I wish you luck on your first day, Izuku." He let out a small laugh at his mother's message. Even as an adult, she worried about him as if he were that shy and nervous schoolboy, but he still appreciated her and his father's attentiveness in wishing him luck and taking care of his daughter. It was a relief to have their support. Assistance that he knew he would need. After all, today was a special day, or to put it in a better way, significant. Because that day he would temporarily set aside his activities as a symbol of peace and focus on teaching at the prestigious Hero School where he had the privilege of studying and graduating with honors. UA. Due to various events, he ended up accepting the job as a teacher, something he didn't expect to do until much later, but he had his reasons for taking on the role, one of them being to relax a bit from his hero work, an idea proposed by his parents and his closest friends, in addition to Eri, who wished to spend more time with him. "It will only be for a while, I can't neglect my job as a symbol of peace," he told himself with a small smile as if he wanted to respond to his parents. After that, he locked his phone and went to prepare breakfast. Something simple to start the day, some omelets with orange juice. He saved Eri's portion for when she woke up, and with everything ready, he began to eat while pondering his thoughts. He could afford it because there was still time before he was scheduled to go to his new workplace. It had been several years since he became the #1 hero, taking over the position that once belonged to his favorite hero and current father, All Might. And even more years had passed since he inherited his quirk. One for all, when the blonde idol offered to turn him into a hero who could save people with a smile. "How time flies, huh?" he said with a slight smile before taking a sip of juice. Because after that moment, both good and bad events occurred that he would cherish for the rest of his life. Victories and defeats, achievements and frustrations, loves and heartbreaks, all of that had shaped him and turned him into what he currently is, and he was grateful for it. Once he finished eating, He went to brush his teeth again and then proceeded to dress for his new job as a teacher. He approached the closet with a calm expression, analyzing what to wear. After all, he wouldn't be wearing his hero costume all the time. In the classroom, he would have to wear clothes suitable for teaching. After a few minutes of consideration, he took the appropriate garments and proceeded to dress with all the calm in the world, as he still had 30 minutes left before heading to UA. Once dressed, he sighed tiredly to himself before looking up at the ceiling. I hope to do a good job, temporary or not. It's still a great responsibility to educate these kids, he said with a tired smile before picking up his phone and heading to bed to take one last look at the sleeping Eerie, who was still resting peacefully. He couldn't bring himself to wake her from her slumber to bid farewell, so he gently kissed her forehead before making his way to the door, hands in his pockets. Perhaps taking a stroll to the academy wouldn't hurt. Izuku strolled down the street with tranquility, garnering the attention of passers-by with his serene gaze. Not only was he recognized as the #1 hero, but his appearance also easily captivated attention, especially from the females around. He was a young and attractive man with fine, somewhat mature yet captivating features, giving him an air of innocence with his freckles. Sporting black boots, dark pants, a black shirt with 2 red lines descending from his collar, and a white work coat that reached his calves with a split cutting his tail in two, his toned figure made him even more appealing to the surrounding girls. Unaware of the gazes he attracted, he walked ahead disinterestedly, hands in pockets. He only pondered whether they stared because he was the symbol of peace, which wouldn't be new to him, or perhaps they wondered why he was dressed that way, a question they would likely find out the answer to within a week or less, as news of his new teaching position would soon spread. He continued walking leisurely until he reached a plaza a few blocks from UA, with a fountain in the center and several shops already open and attended by customers. Izuku smiled faintly at the calmness of the place, reassured by its tranquility uninterrupted by any villains. Although the crime rate was really low due to his presence as the symbol of peace, there were still occasional incidents with villains that required his attention. He hoped that now, as a teacher, other professionals could take care of things in his absence. Hey there, sweetheart, how about you have some fun with us? A man's voice caught the attention of the green-haired man, who turned to see 3 questionable-looking men near the fountain surrounding a young girl with black hair tied up in a large, pointed ponytail. No thanks, I have to go to school, the raven-haired girl replied calmly and stoically, remaining firm and calm despite being surrounded. Oh, come on, a beauty like you must know how to have fun, insisted the burly man of the group with an unpleasant smile. At that moment, the girl resisted the urge to beat up the 3 men who were harassing her. She just wanted to get to school early, but on her way, she encountered these 3 clowns who surrounded her and sought stupid ways to convince her to be with them. A hand rests on the sturdy man's shoulder, catching the attention of the 3 troublemakers and the girl, all focusing on Izuku, who maintained a calm expression. I don't think you heard what the lady just said. She needs to get to school, so I'd appreciate it if you left her alone and didn't bother anyone again, Izuku said, shooting a fierce look at the 3 men, who paled instantly, their expressions turning to panic. Everyone knew who stood before them, and they weren't foolish enough to oppose him. Oh, of course, Deku. Let's go, guys. The group leader told the others, and they scurried away, tails between their legs, filled with fear. Once they were gone, the green-haired sighed tiredly, turning his gaze to the girl he had just helped. Are you okay? Izuku asked the girl with a faint smile, catching her off guard. She blushed slightly, remembering who stood before her. Why yes, thank you so much for helping me, she thanked, a bit nervous but as politely as possible. No need to thank me. Being from UA, I can only imagine you're more than capable of handling them, Izuku said calmly, observing the young girl's uniform. He smiled amusedly, seeing that the design hadn't changed since his time there. Meanwhile, the girl was absorbed in looking at the young man in front of her. She knew he was the #1 hero, Deku, and it was astounding to be in his presence. But more than that, it was the aura of calmness he emitted, coupled with his help in getting rid of those men, not to mention his good looks. You'd better hurry to school. There's at least 10 minutes left before classes start, Izuku told the girl calmly, snapping her out of her thoughts. "Oh, of course, thank you again," she thanked politely, bowing slightly before walking towards Yue. He watched her leave calmly, briefly entertaining the thought of maybe teaching that girl. He dismissed the thought and continued on his way, hands in the pockets of his coat. He wasn't in a hurry to get to the academy, as he could reach it in a matter of minutes with a single jump. His gaze wandered around as he walked until he noticed in the distance a villain with a lizard-like appearance exiting a store with stolen goods, making his escape. Izuku sighed tiredly, then scratched his neck with evident annoyance. "At least I'd appreciate it if they didn't make me late. I can already hear Aizawa-sensei lecturing me," he muttered to himself, then smirked as green rays of One for All began to surround his body. In classroom 3A, there were 20 students from Yue Academy, teenagers ranging between 18 and 17 years old, chatting while waiting for the bell to announce the start of their third-year class. Several were gathered in groups, chatting animatedly near their respective seats. "Did Deku really help you with those thugs?" Kyoka asked her best friend Momo, who sat beside her with her head resting on her hands, lost in thought. "That's amazing, Momo-chan. How is he?" Mina asked with an excited smile as she looked at him eagerly. "Who are you talking about?" Shinso asked curiously from a few seats back, having overheard Mina's question. "Well, you see, Momo-chan ran into the hero Deku on her way here when some jerks were bothering her," Mina replied loudly, standing out among the others and grabbing everyone's attention. "Really? Deku is incredible!" Kirishima exclaimed with excitement, recalling the battles he had seen on television where the green-haired hero defeated villains with one hand and saved people with the other, a smile on his face. "It's probably just a lie. It's not possible for Deku to be around here, let alone stoop to dealing with just some vandals," Psycho commented casually, her eyes closed as she found Momo's story unlikely. "It's not a lie. He arrived and just by seeing them, he scared them off," Momo told her gray-blue-haired friend calmly, understanding her skepticism since it was very rare for the number one hero to be resolving that kind of street conflict. "Man, that sounds amazing. It's the least you can expect from the best hero," Kaminari said, hands behind his head, looking at Sero, Tokoyami, and Shoji, who nodded in agreement. "What do you think, Todoroki-kun?" Uraka asked her two-toned-haired friend with a big smile, as he was always calm and peaceful in his seat. "There's a chance it's true, and there's no reason for Yaoyorozu to lie to us," Todoroki replied calmly, looking at his brown-haired friend while Ida next to him nodded in agreement as he adjusted his glasses. Then Nehire approached Momo, invading her personal space with a big smile. "What's his attitude like? Is he friendly? Is he as strong as he seems? Are his freckles real?" the blue-haired girl asked eagerly, overwhelming Momo a bit, who sighed as she pushed her friend away with her hand. "I don't know him well enough to answer your questions, Nehire-chan, but I do think he was kind," Momo replied, a slight blush on her cheeks as Nehire nodded with interest. "But it's great, isn't it? After all, it means he's a great hero," Mirio said with his typical cheerfulness, hands on his hips as he looked at everyone. "Tagata-chan is right, it's good that the symbol of peace is so reliable, Ribbit," Suyu said, tapping her chin as she looked at Mina and Toru, who nodded in agreement. "Anyway, it's not like we're going to see him in person. It's lucky because I don't think I could handle being in front of someone so brilliant," Tamaki said, his head resting against a wall, feeling small and shy just imagining being face to face with the greatest hero of all. "What do you think, Bakugo? Would you mind talking to the symbol of peace?" Shinso asked the ash blonde behind him with a small mocking smile, causing the boy to click his tongue in annoyance as he looked away. "He's just a copy of All Might, just another nobody I'm going to surpass to be number one," Bakugo replied, hands in his pockets and feet up on his desk, causing more than one person to laugh at the explosive boy's usual attitude. "Anyway, what would be the likelihood of any of us running into Deku?" Kyoka asked casually, a relaxed smile on her face as she shrugged. "The likelihood stands at 1.01% when considering her obligations and the condition of being at UA, although without those factors taken into account, the odds are nearly nil," Psycho responded calmly with her eyes closed, utilizing her quirk IQ, which makes her even smarter than she already is. Wow! I still can't get used to how intelligent you are, Psycho-chan. Exclaimed Toru, animated and surprised by her intelligent friend's response, who had been the class vice president for the past 2 years. Suddenly, the entrance door swung open, revealing Aizawa entering with his usual disinterested and tired gaze. "All right everyone, take your seats," he said, and immediately everyone who was standing went to their seats to pay attention to their assigned teacher. "Good morning, Aizawa-sensei, it's a pleasure to see you again this year," greeted Ida diligently and politely to his dark-haired teacher, who only nodded in response. "I have an important announcement to make. Starting today, I will no longer be your assigned teacher," he announced plainly, taking everyone present by surprise. "What? Why?" exclaimed Sero, surprised, and the rest followed suit. In less than a second, several were protesting and bombarding the teacher with questions, especially Nahir. "Silence," he said seriously, his hair and ribbons levitating upwards, causing everyone to quiet down and remain silent. Then he sighed, relaxing. "For personal reasons, I will be more absent, and because of that, I won't be able to fulfill my role as your main teacher. In light of that, the principal asked someone special to come in my place, and today they begin teaching you," Aizawa explained calmly, and several were disheartened. "But him leaving so suddenly? I don't like it," said Uraka, somewhat dejected, as her teacher had done a lot for her and the rest, leaving a bad taste in her mouth that he was leaving. "It's true, who will punish Mineta for doing perverted things?" asked Momo with some concern, while the purple-haired boy drooled a bit seeing the clear path, although he also felt bad knowing his teacher would be leaving. "I must clarify that I won't be leaving the school, I just won't be your assigned teacher anymore and will focus on giving you physical training as it suits my schedule better," said the dark-haired man calmly, causing several to feel relieved by that. He had spent a lot of time with these kids and couldn't help but feel a certain attachment to them. "And who will be your replacement? Is it a man or a woman? Tall or short? Talkative or quiet?" Nahir asked with a big smile, carried away by her insatiable curiosity, but certainly, the rest were also intrigued by the identity of the new teacher. "He was a student of mine, just like you. He was the best in his class, and currently, he has a brilliant career as a professional hero," said the dark-haired man, remembering that heroic spirit who was the center of the hero course back then. "That sounds very promising. For you to praise him, he must be someone incredible," commented Shinso with a small smile, looking at his mentor, as he knew from experience that earning Aizawa's recognition was difficult. "Exactly. He must be someone amazing," exclaimed Mina with her arms in the air, while several others formed a mental image of who their new teacher would be, some letting their imagination run wild. In that moment, Aizawa's phone rang, prompting him to retrieve it from his pocket and read the message that had arrived. After reading it, he sighed wearily. "Speaking of which, he's on his way here. He had to apprehend a few villains on the way," Aizawa calmly informed everyone, intending to lecture the green-haired one once the time was right. Despite his duty, he had to prioritize and leave the villains for the other heroes to handle. "Damn, that sounds amazing. That guy must be really strong," exclaimed Kaminari excitedly, looking forward to meeting his new mentor. And he wasn't the only one interested, several others were becoming more intrigued by the identity of their assigned professional teacher, even Bakugo, though he didn't show it to the others. Then, a faint knocking on the door grabbed the class's attention as they turned to see the entrance. "Come in," Aizawa said, and the sliding door moved aside as a familiar figure entered. Everyone's eyes widened in surprise at the sight of those green curls, freckles, and emerald eyes they had seen on television several times. They couldn't believe it, they were astonished to see the identity of the person who had just entered the classroom. Particularly Momo was surprised to see the same person who had helped her minutes ago. "Good morning, Aizawa-sensei, it's good to see you again after so long," greeted Izuku with a small friendly smile to the black-haired man who looked at him calmly. "You can stop calling me that now, remember I'm no longer your teacher, Midoriya," Aizawa replied, ignoring the student's surprise. Sorry for being late, even though I left early, I ended up being delayed, said the green-haired one, scratching his cheek lightly. We'll have a conversation later about sorting out your priorities. For now, it's better if you start your class, the black-haired one told Izuku seriously as he began to walk towards the exit. Please give my regards to Emi-san. Congratulations to both of you, Izuku said with a small smile, watching his former teacher leave the room, closing the door after nodding. Once Aizawa left, Izuku turned to the students who were still in shock at seeing him there. This amused him slightly, and he smiled amusedly before going to his desk where he looked at them all to speak up. Good morning, everyone. I will be your assigned teacher from today onwards, as well as your teacher in Fundamental Hero Studies. It's a pleasure to work with you all from now on, he said with a calm and friendly expression, appearing mature and capable. After that, Psycho raised her hand, catching the green-haired one's attention. Yes, please speak, he said, giving his consent. You haven't introduced yourself yet, Psycho said, internally nervous. She knew all signs pointed to him obviously being who he seemed to be, but she couldn't fully grasp it due to the slim chances of having someone like him in their classroom, let alone as a teacher. Oh right, my name is Izuku Midoriya, and I'm currently known as the hero Deku. Nice to meet you all, he introduced himself simply and somewhat amusingly for his oversight, causing those still in denial to be surprised to confirm that they indeed had in front of them the symbol of peace, the pillar of hope, the hero among heroes, and the exemplary figure of good. Well, now you're going to stand up in the order of your seats so that each one can state their name, age, and then give a brief overview of their special ability, announced the green-haired individual calmly, reaching for the list on his desk with one hand. Let's start with number 1, he said, leaning back against the blackboard to pay attention to his new students. Then the girl with pink skin stood up with a big smile. She has short, curly hair of the same color but a lighter shade, her scleras are black with yellow irises, and she has 2 small yellow horns that bend outward from her head. My name is Mina Ashido, I'm 17 years old, and my special ability is acid. It allows me to shoot corrosive acid from inside my body and control its solubility and viscosity. She introduced herself with a lot of excitement and contagious enthusiasm before sitting down, with another girl standing up behind her. She's a half-frog girl, with straight dark green hair tied in a bow shape at the back, large black eyes with visible lower lashes, pink circles on her cheeks, and a mouth in a stretched V-shape. My name is Tsuyu Asui, I'm 17, and my special ability frog makes me half frog, granting me some frog-like abilities such as high jumping, stretching my tongue, and more. Ribbit, she announced calmly before sitting down, while the next student stood up. He's a tall, muscular boy with black hair and square glasses. Nice to meet you, sensei. My name is Tenya Ida, and I'm 17 years old. My special ability, Engine, allows me to turn my legs into motors, giving me super speed. Exclaimed the bespectacled boy with a somewhat exaggerated bow before sitting down again as the next one stood up. She's a slender girl with fair skin, big round brown eyes with short lashes, straight brown hair shoulder length divided into 2 long strands on either side of her face with a slight wave at the back, and a slight natural blush on her cheeks. My name is Ochako Uraka, and I'm 17 years old. My special ability, Zero Gravity, allows me to manipulate the gravity of objects I touch with my hands, like canceling their weight or making them float, also nullifying their effect by touching my hands together. She introduced herself with some nervousness before sitting down timidly, avoiding eye contact with her teacher. Then a boy stands up, he has blonde hair with black lightning-shaped streaks and short, thin eyebrows. My name is Denki Kaminari and like most, I'm 17 years old. My quirk electrification allows me to release electricity from my body, though exceeding my limit causes a short circuit in my brain. He introduced himself calmly despite Kyoka and Sero laughing at him, recalling when he acted foolishly by going overboard. Next, a boy with spiky red hair resembling horns stood up, his physique notably well built for his age. My name is Eijiro Kirishima, 17 years old, and my quirk hardening, redundantly enough, allows me to harden my body for both offense and defense. He presented himself with an excited smile and a fist raised in front of him, then sat down as the next person stood up. A tall boy with loose white hair covering his face, wearing a mask except for his eyes, and 6 arms, 4 of which are tentacles extending from his back, spoke calmly. I'm Mezzo Shoji, 18 years old. My quirk Dupli Arms allows me to replicate different parts of my body on the tips of the 4 tentacles from my back, granting them a myriad of uses, he said calmly before sitting down as the next person rose. A slender girl with fair skin and tired-looking large gray eyes, short jet black hair with an asymmetrical bang, and distinctive connector-shaped earlobes that seemed extendable and controllable at will. Jiru Kyoka, 17 years old, with the quirk earphone jack, granting me the ability to connect my jacks to any surface and destroy it by emitting amplified sound waves from my heartbeat. I can also easily receive waves, allowing me to eavesdrop on conversations through walls, she introduced herself calmly, masking the few nerves she felt facing the symbol of peace. The next was a tall, thin teenager with dark hair almost reaching his shoulders, long arms, large almond-shaped eyes with small irises, and a simple smile. I'm Hanta Sero, 17 years old, with the quirk tape, allowing me to expel a material similar to cellophane adhesive tape from my elbows, as well as retract it, he said calmly before sitting down as the next person stood behind him. Of relatively short stature with a bird-shaped head, pointed feathers, red eyes, a striped red choker, a short beak, and human teeth. Despite these features, the rest of his body is of common human form. My name is Fumikage Tokoyami, I'm 17, and my quirk Dark Shadow is a shadow creature that emerges from my body, useful for both offense and defense. Its power increases with more darkness, he said mysteriously before sitting down, making way for the next person. Izuku's eyes opened slightly as he saw a bicolor-haired boy stand up. He has straight and short hair evenly divided between white on the right side and red on the left. A burn scar marks his left eye, and he has heterochromia, with his left eye turquoise and his right eye gray. My name is Shoto Todoroki, 17 years old. My quirk, half cold half hot, allows me to freeze with the right side of my body and burn with the left, but I only use the right, he said calmly yet firmly, looking at Izuku before sitting down. He's grown since the last time I saw him. Will he remember me? Izuku thought calmly, glancing at Todoroki before shifting his gaze to a floating uniform belonging to an invisible classmate. My name is Toru Hagakure, also 17. My quirk, invisibility, allows me to be invisible. It's quite simple, hee, Toru said playfully before taking her seat. The next student remained seated with his feet on the table in defiance. He has ash blonde, messy hair with pointed ends, red, slanted eyes slightly smaller than usual, and a furrowed brow, with his uniform somewhat unkempt. My name is Katsuki Bakugo. Remember it well because I'll be the one to surpass you someday, Bakugo declared arrogantly, glaring threateningly at the green-haired boy, causing most to view him incredulously, considering him quite foolish for speaking to the best hero like that. Oh, it's a very curious name. You don't mind if I shorten it to Kachan, do you? Izuku asked with a gentle, innocent smile, causing Katsuki to grit his teeth. What did you say? He exclaimed angrily, aggressively rising from his seat to look where the green-haired boy should be, but instead, there were remnants of green lightning, and in less than a second, Izuku was beside him, calmly smiling, causing the others to widen their eyes in amazement at his speed. Let's see, Kachan, please tell me your age and quirk, Izuku requested calmly, which was unsettling for the blonde, feeling somewhat intimidated by the height difference and the presence of the green-haired boy. Bakugo looked away in annoyance while everyone watched attentively as Bakugo couldn't do anything. TCH, 17 years old, and my quirk, explosion, allows me to secrete nitroglycerin through the sweat of my hands and detonate it at will to create explosions, he begrudgingly explained, feeling angry at himself for being cornered so easily. That's a good quirk. We'll have to work on the bearer's character to match it, Izuku said calmly with a slight smile, then began walking towards his desk while Bakugo, with anger, dropped heavily into his seat. Next, please, calmly requested the green-haired individual, causing others to snap out of their surprise, and a young man stood up. He is rather diminutive, with a sizable cranium, large eyes, and hair reminiscent of a bunch of grapes. My name is Minoru Mineta, and I'm 17. My quirk, Pop Off, allows me to detach spheres from my head and hurl them. These spheres can adhere to anything except myself. He introduced himself, somewhat tense due to Bakugo's intimidating presence, then took a seat, yielding to the next. She's a young, attractive girl with a remarkably mature physique for her age, also one of the tallest students in the class. She has elongated eyes, fair skin, and jet black hair tied into a large, pointed ponytail. My name is Momo Yaoyorozu, and I'm 17 years old. My quirk, Creation, grants me the ability to generate any inert material from my body through molecular manipulation of my fat cells. As long as I understand how something is made, I can create it, although larger objects take longer, she explained politely and respectfully, hands clasped, facing her teacher. Then, Yaoyorozu, I'm glad you made it on time unlike me, said Izuku with a slight smile, putting the raven-haired girl slightly on edge. I wouldn't have made it if not for you. Thank you very much, Momo replied with a slight blush, giving a small bow before taking her seat as the next student stood up. He's a tall, muscular lad with blonde hair and a pompadour style, black eyes, and a toned physique. His face appears simple and cartoonish, with a perpetual smile plastered on it. My name is Mirio Tagata, 18 years old. My quirk, Permeability, allows me to become intangible, enabling me to pass through walls and solid objects, including the ground itself. I hope to improve a lot under your guidance. He exclaimed excitedly, giving a thumbs up before a girl rose behind him. That girl has fair skin, big blue eyes, and extremely long light blue hair that reaches down to her legs and seems to spiral around her waist area. She also possesses a physique that rivals Momo's. How old are you? What's your favorite color? How many villains have you defeated? Are your freckles real? Nehire asked with great interest and enthusiasm, forgetting to introduce herself, which made Izuku smile amusedly. I'm 22, black is my favorite color, I don't keep count, and yes, my freckles are real, Izuku calmly replied, looking at the blue-haired girl. Now, please introduce yourself, and you can ask me questions afterward, he added, eager to hear the name of his curious student. My name is Nehire Hado, an 18-year-old. My ability, Cold Surge, allows me to manipulate and generate shockwaves from my vitality. She introduced herself with enthusiasm and excitement before taking her seat, while behind her, a shy boy stood up. He's a boy with dark, messy hair, pointed ears, and slanted eyes, yet he appears timid and insecure as he lowers his head, holding a strand of hair in front of his face to cover himself. My name is Tamakiya Majiki, and I'm 18 years old. My quirk, Manifestation, allows me to manifest the characteristics of the things I eat and digest, the boy said before quickly sitting down, looking overwhelmed by speaking so much. Then a girl with long, bluish-gray hair and eyes of the same color stood up, wearing UA standard uniform along with very long dark stockings, a white beret, gloves, and boots of the same color. She wears a golden monocle over her left eye with a lavender jewel at the end. Good morning, my name is Psycho Intella, and I'm 17 years old. My quirk, Intellect, temporarily enhances my intelligence after consuming tea and closing my eyes to think. The level of enhancement depends on the tea brand. It will be a pleasure to be under your care, Psycho said with a subtle and polite smile, bowing slightly to her new teacher before returning to her seat. Lastly, a tall boy with messy purple hair and eyes of the same color stood up. His eyes have very dark bags underneath them, and he also appears to lack eyelashes completely. He has sharp teeth, and for a moment, Izuku could see Aizawa in the boy, which amused him but kept it to himself. My name is Hitoshi Shinso, I'm 18 years old. My quirk, Mind Control, allows me to control the minds of people who verbally respond to me. As a result, they will be forced to do what I want, although I only use it when permitted, he revealed calmly, observing his teacher before sitting down. Okay, with the introductions done, you can each ask me 4 questions before we start the class. I need to explain the basics today, Izuku said calmly, looking at his students, most of whom immediately raised their hands, except for Bakugo, Todoroki, Shoji, and Tokoyami. Miss Intella, the green-haired teacher added, giving permission to the gray-haired girl who stood up from her seat. What is the reason you wanted to be our teacher? Psycho asked curiously, and several others showed interest in the answer. Interesting question. It's mostly due to some personal matters, but partly to take a brief break from my busy hero activities, replied the green-haired individual with a slight smile, and then the girl resumed her seat. Now, young Ida, he said, fixing his gaze on the bespectacled boy who stood up with his hands on his desk. If I may ask, what will be the structure of your classes? Inquired the black-haired student, and Izuku nodded. As I am your assigned teacher, I will provide theory as well as discussions on various topics such as your performance. As a teacher of fundamental hero studies, I will impart both theoretical and practical classes to test you in various ways. You've probably experienced the same with Aizawa-sensei, replied Izuku calmly with his hands in his pockets. Thank you very much for answering my question. Ida thanked before taking his seat. The young teacher amusingly watched as Nehire eagerly raised her hand high to get his attention. I'm not sure who might be next, he said, stroking his chin with one hand and smiling amusedly as he noticed the blue-haired girl even rising slightly from her seat to raise her hand higher, as if pleading to be chosen. Perhaps Miss Hato, he said amusingly, looking at her, causing the blue-haired girl to smile widely and quickly stand up. When is your birthday? What zodiac sign are you? How should we address you? Deku-sensei or Midoriya-sensei? The blue-haired girl asked without pause and with her usual high energy. I'll only answer one question. You can call me whatever you like, I have no problem with that, replied Izuku calmly, causing Nehire to sit back in her seat with a pout as she had hoped he would answer all her questions. Go ahead, Miss Ashido, he said, giving the floor to the girl who then stood up. Do you have a girlfriend? And if not, do you want one? The pink-haired girl asked with a mischievous smile, causing several to tense up, specifically the girls who focused their attention on their teacher who smiled slightly. That's a very personal question, Miss Ashido. No, I don't have a partner at the moment. Whether I'm looking for one or not, I'll leave that to your imagination, replied the young teacher calmly, before picking up the chalk from his desk and starting to write the details of his class on the board. Mina smiled to herself while the rest of the girls sighed, relaxing without understanding the reason for their interest in their teacher's response. Either way, they ignored that and focused on paying attention to what the green-haired one was saying. That's why the following classes will review the topics you've seen in both first and second year. I'll take into account the contributions you make based on the experiences you've gained, Izuku told everyone calmly, with one hand in a pocket of his coat while using the other to write some information on the board. After that, the sound of the bell resonated, signaling the end of the class, and Izuku stopped writing, turning to face his students. Let's leave it at that for now. We'll pick up where we left off in the last class of the day. It's best if you hurry to the cafeteria for now, he said with a friendly smile, closing his eyes kindly. The students began to pack up their notebooks and get ready to leave the classroom. Izuku, on the other hand, walked over to his desk, calmly placing his hands on it before letting out a small sigh. He hadn't prepared lunch to eat in the teacher's lounge, and going to the cafeteria carelessly on his first day could give a bad impression. Midoriya-sensei, one of his students' voices caught his attention, and he noticed that most of his class was surrounding his desk. The only ones missing were Mineta, Shoji, and Tokoyami, as Bakugo and Todoroki watched him from their seats. What's going on? He asked calmly, regaining his composure and putting his hands in his pockets. Psycho stepped forward to speak. Sorry to take up your time, Midoriya-sensei, but we were wondering if you really studied here at UA, the gray-haired girl said with a small smile, being as courteous as possible, with several others nodding in agreement. That's true, Miss Intella. Like you, I was a student of Aizawa-sensei here at UA. You might not have known because of the limited personal information the media has about me, the teacher replied with a small smile, looking at his students. That's really amazing. I didn't know that the symbol of peace attended the same school as us, exclaimed Kaminari excitedly, while Sero nodded in agreement. Isn't it difficult for you to be both a teacher and a hero at the same time? Kirishima asked the green-haired man with a curious smile. Didn't you hear? He became a teacher to take a break from his hero activities, Juru said to her red-haired friend simply. It's true that I'm taking a little break, but I still apply my professional title and intervene if I see any villains, clarified Izuku calmly, looking at Kirishima, whose eyes lit up with excitement. That's very manly, exclaimed the boy excitedly, causing Izuku to smile amusedly. After that, Nehire approached the desk with a big smile, looking at her teacher. What's your favorite food? Do you like playing video games? What music do you listen to? Do you like jokes? Can I tell you a joke? She bombarded the green-haired man with questions, who smiled calmly at her. You have to stop doing that, Nehire-chan scolded Momo, taking her friend by the shoulders to pull her away from the desk. You need to respect Midoriya-sensei's privacy. You have to give him his space, she said to Nehire, who pouted and sought to protest. Don't worry, Miss Yaoyorozu, said Izuku calmly, capturing the attention of his two students. Then he focused on Nehire. If you want, you can ask me all the questions you want, but you'll only get answers from me as you prove how involved you are in my classes, okay? He said, causing the blue-haired girl to show excitement and nod eagerly. Putting that aside, I have a question for you, Midoriya-sensei, Shinso said, catching the young teacher's attention. What was it like being a student of Aizawa-sensei? He asked calmly. I'm sure you already know since you've spent 2 years with him. Nothing has changed since then, Izuku responded calmly. When will we start our fundamental hero studies classes with you? Ida asked his teacher while adjusting his glasses. Next week. Today is just a brief introduction for me. The following days will be reviews of the basics, as I mentioned earlier, and then we can start with hero training, the young teacher replied, looking at his student who nodded and then bowed gratefully for the response. It was amazing how quickly you moved to be by Bakugo's side, exclaimed Mineta, excitedly reminding the others of that moment. It's true, I've never seen anyone move at that speed before, Hagakure commented, recalling the speed at which her teacher moved. That speed surpasses my reaction time. I certainly wouldn't stand a chance against you, Mirio said with a smile, looking at Izuku with a certain admiration, as it had to be the symbol of peace who would train them from now on. For now, I should go and take a break. The next class is with Mike-sensei, if I remember correctly, Izuku told his students. Why yes, you're right. Sorry for taking up your time, Uraka apologized, a little nervous, and bowing slightly to the green-haired teacher. No need to apologize. It's normal to want to know more about the new teacher who will be with you, but we'll have time for that later, he told them all with a friendly smile, causing the young ones to understand, and they began to leave the classroom. Izuku noticed Bakugo lowering his feet from his seat to start walking towards the exit with a furrowed brow and a rebellious aura, followed by Kirishima, Sero, and Kaminari who began to talk animatedly among themselves. Then he noticed Todoroki getting up from his seat monotonously and joining Momo, Shinso, Jiro, and Intel at the exit, while behind them followed Mirio, Nehire, Tamaki, Ida, and Uraka, and then they all left the room, leaving the green-haired teacher alone. I didn't expect to run into Shoto in this place. It seems he doesn't remember me. I don't know if that's good or bad, but for now, it's the best, Izuku thought, looking pensively at the ceiling before feeling his phone vibrate in his pocket. Curiously, he took it out of his pants pocket to see that it was a message from Aizawa. Aizawa, Emmy prepared a lot of food. If you want, I can give it to you in the teacher's lounge. Izuku sighed with relief at having found a solution to his hunger. He had to remember to thank his ex-teacher's wife for being his savior this time. Then his phone vibrated again, catching his attention with the new message he received. Aizawa, we still need to have a serious talk about your priorities. That message killed the green-haired teacher's joy. He felt defeated and began to walk towards the exit of his classroom. Now he remembered his ex-teacher's constant sermons every time he put himself in danger. Now that he had to be lectured again, he could feel himself back in that time of his youth. He had returned to UA after all. Later, The remainder of the day passed without incident. He returned to classroom 3A to deliver his final introductory class and bid farewell to his students before walking towards the academy's exit. After a few minutes, he emerged from the premises with a powerful leap, soaring into the air at great speed. The wind brushed against his face, tousling his curls as he remained relaxed despite being suspended several meters above the ground. Minutes later, he stood in front of the house where he grew up, now inhabited by his parents. Smiling with nostalgia, he approached the door and rang the bell, waiting for someone to answer. After a brief wait, he heard hurried footsteps approaching the door, which swung open to reveal a small 5-year-old girl with fair skin and long white hair with light blue highlights. Her eyes were large and round with red irises, and a small brown horn adorned the right side of her forehead. She wore a red dress with lace and white sandals. "Daddy!" exclaimed the little Eri with innocent joy, throwing herself into Izuku's arms, who greeted her with a wide, happy smile. "I'm glad to see you, Eri. Did you enjoy the omelets for breakfast?" asked the green-haired man, as Eri pulled away from the hug to nod her head. "They were delicious. I shared some with Grandpa," the little one replied tenderly, then took Izuku's hand and urged him to enter the house, where his mother and Toshinori awaited. His mother was dressed in a cream-colored shirt, a pink sweater, and a yellow skirt. Toshinori, on the other hand, wore formal yellow pants, a white shirt with a black tie, all of which were excessively large for his thin frame. "And tell us, how was your first day?" asked Inko, her hands clasped together and a maternal smile as she watched him enter hand in hand with Eri. "It went very well. I didn't encounter any problems, and everyone seemed attentive when I spoke." "I think it's a good start," the young man replied calmly, looking at his mother. "That's good to hear. Remember, you have a great responsibility in educating those young heroes in training," Toshinori said with a small smile, placing a hand on his son's shoulder, passing on the torch of one for all. "I know. I will strive to live up to it properly," Izuku replied with joy, looking at the blonde before feeling his daughter tug at his hand to get his attention. "What's wrong, Eri?" he asked with a smile. "When can I accompany you to school?" asked the little girl with puppy eyes, as she didn't like being away from her father, causing the green-haired man to smile tenderly. "I'm arranging the details with Director Nezu, so wait a little longer, okay?" Izuku said with a gentle and warm expression to the little one, who nodded happily. "It would be better if you stayed for dinner, so we can celebrate your first day as a teacher, Izuku," Inko said excitedly, clapping her hands together before heading to the kitchen. "That sounds good. That way, you can tell us all the details," Toshinori added with a smile, looking at his disciple who agreed, and then they sat down on the living room sofas to start a conversation while Inko prepared dinner. They had spent more time conversing with Inko and Toshinori, and by nightfall, they had to return home to rest. Upon arrival, they spent some time watching television on the living room couch, but by 9 p.m. it was bedtime, so they prepared for sleep. Now Izuku and Eri emerged from the bathroom dressed for bed after bathing and brushing their teeth. Eri wore a cute white pajama with pink bunnies, while Izuku wore black boxers, revealing his toned physique. "All right, Eri, go to sleep in your room," Izuku requested his daughter as he approached her, who was bouncing on her bed with joy. "But I want to sleep with you, Daddy. I'm scared to be alone," Eri replied, ceasing her bouncing and pleadingly looking at her father, who tried his best to remain firm. "Remember, you need to learn to face your fears to grow up," he told the little one, who lowered her head sadly, puffing her cheeks. "But I don't want to be a big girl yet. I want to stay with Daddy longer," said Eri with an adorable pout as her eyes welled up, and she clenched her tiny fists. Izuku sighed defeated, unable to resist his little one's request. "All right, but you must promise me you'll eat the vegetables Grandma cooks, okay?" the elder said with a kind and gentle smile, lifting the girl's spirits as she nodded while wiping her eyes with her arm. "All right, I promise," Eri said with a sweet and lovely expression, brightening up the green-haired man, and then they both settled into bed to sleep. The little one snuggled close to Izuku, using his arm as a pillow, while he smiled faintly as he looked at the room ceiling. "Good night, Eri," Izuku said affectionately as the little one was falling prey to sleep. "Yayu, good night, Daddy," Eri responded with a slight smile after yawning, then closed her eyes and comfortably fell asleep feeling protected in her father's arms. Izuku watched her calmly, then sighed and looked back at the ceiling. It's been 3 years since Eri came into his life and he adopted her as his daughter, which he deeply appreciates as she has become an essential pillar for him. Who would have thought? I'm a father and a teacher, just need to be married, he joked to himself, then chuckled softly not to wake Eri. It's not like anyone's interested in me anyway, but I can't let Eri grow up without a mother figure, though those are problems for later. For now, we're good, the green-haired man thought calmly before closing his eyes and drifting off to sleep in the world of dreams. Folks, for the first segment. That's all I have got. Hope you relish diving into this fan creation. And if you haven't already, kindly consider hitting the thumbs up, sharing, and subscribing to my channel. Much obliged. Eternally thankful. Anime Dreams.